What's going on, guys? FlyBy Simulations here, and welcome back to yet another Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 video. It's gonna take some time to start saying that, but here we are, and if you guys have seen my previous video, you would have known that I was stuck in a bit of a bug where my camera was constantly moving in one particular direction, constantly moving to the left, I believe it was, which I've now managed to fix, as you can see. And the way I managed to fix it was that I actually went back to my Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 file and brought over all of my control settings from there into Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, a highly painstaking process that I would have thought Microsoft would have made a priority for people who already own the previous iteration of the franchise to be easily able to bring all of their controls into this one, but apparently not. So I thought I'd make a control settings video to kind of show you guys how I have my peripheral devices set up. I don't have a very complex setup or anything. I have some pretty basic stuff. I have a throttle quadrant, I have a side stick, I have some rudder pedals, and of course I have a keyboard, mouse, and a Xbox game controller, a PS5 game controller that I use. So we'll go over some of these controls and I'll kind of show you what my setup is. You don't have to kind of emulate all of them, but you can as much as you want. I will also show you how to save custom camera views and stuff like that, but you might have seen that from other YouTubers as well. But if you want like a one-stop shop kind of tutorial, this might be it. So without further ado, if you guys do enjoy this video and if you guys want to see more of this, please do consider liking, subscribing, all that usual shebang. That would be appreciated. And let's go into our settings window and actually walk you guys through all of the pertinent settings that I have changed. So going into the controls options here, as I said, these are my peripheral devices. For the mouse, I haven't made any changes, so we won't be going into that, obviously. For the Xbox gamepad, which is the PS5 controller that I have, I'm actually planning to make a separate cinematics video because that's what I use my sort of gamepad for. It's to record those cinematic, slow-moving shots and stuff like that because the dexterity offered by a thumbstick is way higher than what you get with a keyboard. So that's also going to be reserved for a future video. Now, the thing I would like to say about the keyboard and the other peripheral devices that I have is I will only be walking you through through the actual settings that I have changed, the keybinds that I have changed. The ones that I haven't changed, obviously, are all default Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 things, so you don't have to touch them. However, when I do, for example, ask you to change a particular keybind to, or if you guys do decide to change a particular keybind to what my keybind is, so for example, let's say if I search by input here, spacebar, I have my spacebar thing set to Cockpit External View Mode, and if you want to also set that up, you also have to first go into search by input, press spacebar, and see what other things are already using spacebar and clear them first. So that's something that you have to remember to do, otherwise there's going to be conflicting keybinds. But with that disclaimer all out of the way, let's go ahead and show you what I have assigned and what I have actually manually changed. So all of this stuff towards the top is pretty much the same, all of the transponder settings, trim settings, and stuff like that, all the way until we come down here to toggle active pause. Now, toggle active pause, it was set to something else before, but I have always set it to the letter P on my keyboard. I just think it makes sense. Pause, P, just makes sense. So I have that set up as P. My actual pause setting, of course, is set to the escape key. So the escape key on the keyboard will actually unpause my sim. Next up are two small eye tracking / head tracking settings that I had to change. Now, there is a detailed Tobii Eye Tracker 5 video coming up for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 that I will make, but these are the two settings that already came up. So for my eye tracking reset setting for Tobii Eye Tracker, if you are using that as well, I have bound this to the left square bracket key, and right underneath that is this semicolon key, which is toggle head tracking. So both of them are pretty close together on my keyboard here, and that's what I have bound these two. Moving on, we also have the Cockpit / external view mode here, which is spacebar. Now, what this does is it easily allows you to move between the cockpit mode as well as the external mode. I can actually show you this real quick. So if we go back to our thing, what usually people end up doing is they have to go into their cockpit sort of camera here using their mouse, and that takes them to their cockpit mode. And then they have the external mode, and then they can kind of switch like this. So what I have done is if you just hit spacebar, you can easily switch from the external mode here down to the cockpit really quickly. Super easy. So that's another thing that you guys can maybe incorporate. That's the actual command that you need to search for. Next up then, these are pretty important, and they actually, as a matter of fact, two of these actually come from X-Planes. So I have always been used to using the increase and decrease cockpit view height as up and down on my arrow keys. Whenever I'm in my cockpit, that actually moves my camera up and down. I'll show you guys in just a second. To actually move my camera towards something, I actually use the period key, and to move something backwards, I actually use the comma key. So those are the two things that I'm using. Once again, I will show you these. So let's go back to the cockpit view. And inside the cockpit, if I want to move my camera up and down, I can just go like this. So down and then up, and then right and then left is obviously the translation. And if I want to yaw either side, obviously that's pretty simple. I just use my mouse to do it. Or if I'm using my Tobii eye tracker, I can just kind of move my head around. But if I want to move towards or away from something, this is something that a lot of people have trouble with, and they actually don't know how to translate their cameras like this. You can actually use the period key to kind of move towards something, and the comma key to move away from it. So this also allows you to kind of set up some custom views, because I can go here and I can say, let's say I want this to be my wing view. I can go ahead and set this up in the next keybind that I show you. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so these are what I use to actually set up custom camera views. You can set up to 10, I believe. I think you might be able to do 20. I think MSFS 2020 allowed for 20, but I haven't been able to go in and dig that deep. But 10 is good enough for most aircraft. You can do right camera view, left camera view, you know, an FMS view if you're flying an A320 or something, or not an MCDU or something. So what I have set up is basically to save the camera. I just look at a particular spot in the cockpit and I just hit Control combined with one of the numeral keys. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. And when I actually want to get to those keys, all I have to do is just type that key on my keypad. Pretty simple. Now, originally this is set to something complicated like Control Alt 9 will help save the custom camera 9 position, and you have to press Alt 9 to be able to get to that. I find that's too hard. I find that's too difficult. I don't know why they don't just simplify it. I just have Control 0 and then you just hit 0. Pretty simple. I'll show you how this works as well. So let's go back to the cockpit here. And if I want to save this as, let's say, custom camera view 7, okay, I'm just going to hit Control and 7 on my keyboard. And then we're going to go back to our main sort of view by pressing F. That's also default, so you don't have to change that. And if I just hit 7 on my keyboard, I automatically come here. And you can see the potential of this, right? Like you can, every time you're like in a cockpit or something like that, if I want my original cockpit view to be a little higher than this, I can obviously go and say, let's say this is custom view 2. So if this is what it defaults to every time I'm in the aircraft, I can just hit 2 and now I'm in my preferred position in the cockpit. So you can set up to 10 of these in each aircraft, and it will remember that. And once you're set up, every time you come back into the aircraft, you don't have to kind of reset them up. You could just kind of hit those keybind commands and it will be pretty much, it'll abide by that every time. So those are pretty much all of the camera views that I have set up. Finally, on the keyboard and camera front then is the drone controls that I have set up. So for drone controls, I have the WASD keys to actually translate the drone in different directions. I also have the arrow keys as the to be able to look in certain directions and to actually view in certain directions. You'll see this in just a second. And I have the R and F keys to actually move the drone up or down. So all of these are located quite next to each other on a keyboard, if you can imagine it. And I'll show you how I have that set up. Really quick though, in order to toggle the actual drone camera, I also have a quick nifty little keybind, which is this little key, which is right below the escape key. Most keyboards should have this, but if you don't, you can kind of bind this to anything. I find it super easy to be able to just hit one button and just go into drone camera super easily as compared to, you know, fiddling through the camera controls and everything like that. So once again, let's show you how that looks like. If I'm in the cockpit view, for example, ideally, how would you enter drone view? You'd go here and then you would hit the drone button. See how long this takes. It's just useless. If I really want to quickly go to the drone view, all I have to do is hit that little keybind command. And there we go. Now we're in drone view. Now, how do I actually move around in the drone view? I hit R to go up, and I use my arrow keys to be able to look in either direction. So top, down, right, and left. And I'm still pressing R here. That's why we're moving up. And if I want to move down, of course, I just hit the F key, which sits right under the R key on the actual keyboard. And if I want to move forward, I just hit W. Back is S. Left is A. And right is D. And that way I can basically just kind of move in any direction I see fit. Now, I do recommend that if you have a Xbox controller or a PS5 controller or PS2 controller even, I think everything works pretty much, you can bind that, and that gives you a lot more dexterity in terms of control and speed and stuff like that when you want to sort of film these vistas and like these shots for cinematic content or something. Or even if you just want to kind of look around in the sim, I think it's very easy to do as compared to fiddling around with these little keys and stuff like that. So that's just my personal opinion, but that tutorial video should be coming up soon when I do make a cinematic tutorial video for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Get subscribed for that. Now, moving on from that, the other peripheral devices that I have set up are pretty simple. The Saitek's ProFlight rudder pedals, let's see what I have. So the assigned, there's only the 3 axes that I have assigned, the left and right toe brakes, as well as the actual rudder controls. That's pretty self-explanatory. For the T16000M, I do have a few sort of controls set up. Now, this is something that you guys can choose to incorporate if you want or not. It's just my personal preference. So I use, it's kind of hard to understand what joystick button 3 is, but I can kind of point it out here in this little graphic, I guess. So elevator trim down, I actually have it set to this button right here, this left side button, and elevator trim up is set to this button right here. So I can quickly just trim the aircraft up and down by just pressing those 2 buttons. Flaps, I actually don't bother with. These are all default keybinds. I never use sort of flap controls using my actual sight stick. I actually have that set up on my throttle, which is right here. So we're going to get to that in just a second as well. So another one I do have actually is this key right here, the closest one, the big fat one right next to the actual sight stick. This one is actually set to toggle off and on the parking brakes. I find this easy, you know, just having one single button. You can of course bind this to your keyboard as well if you please, but I just feel like when I'm kind of doing my flight control check and stuff like that using my sight stick, I can just hit that little key and that gets rid of the parking brakes, or it sets the parking brakes whenever I want it to. So pretty self-explanatory again. And that's pretty much all I had for the sight stick. Let's go into the throttle now. The throttle, I do have a few more binds. So the first bind I have is, of course, the pretty self-explanatory one. The actual axis is set to the power management, which is pretty obvious again. I do have these little rudder pedal sort of equivalents towards the back of the T16000M. Those are also automatically set to, let's say, search by input. As you can see, this joystick R axis, I can actually do ruddering. So if I don't want to use my rudder pedals down there, and if I just want to use my fingers, I can just kind of use my rudder pedals through my throttle quadrant. But more importantly, some of the keys and stuff that I have set here, let's see. So these 2 orange little buttons that you guys see here, I know this is hard to understand, but these 2 orange little buttons I have here are for flaps. So flaps up and down. This little button right over here that I have set up is for landing gear. So when I pull that little thing up, it's for landing gear. I can show it to you here as well. So if I go like that is toggle landing gear. That's the number 5 command. And finally, I also have this little wheel right here. I don't know if you can see this. It's like a spinning wheel that is like almost like an axis. I use that for my spoilers. So if I go all the way down, the spoilers will go all the way down. If I go all the way up, the spoilers can come all the way up. And I can kind of dynamically control how much of the lever of shame I like to have up or down, depending on the phase of flight. And let's go ahead and ramp this guy up. And that's pretty much it, guys. Those are my controls that I use. It took a long time to get these into Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 because it seems simple right now, but I had to go ahead and understand every drone camera view, every sort of passive camera view, cockpit camera view, and then, you know, sort of sift through all of the other ones that are there just to complicate things and kind of bring everything down to a simple 10-minute concise video for you folks. So if you guys do appreciate this, please do smash the like button as well as subscribe to the channel. Lots more of these tutorial kind of videos coming as well. It's a new simulator. Of course, I'm going to be making some graphic settings guides, color settings guides. In fact, really cheekily, I'm just going to show you quickly. I am using some color filters here that I have set up for myself really quickly, of course, but a more extensive NVIDIA color filter and Rex Atmos guide whenever that comes out for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 should be coming out for the channel very, very soon. So please do consider looking forward to that. And if you guys enjoyed this, do what you have to do. As always, guys, thanks for watching and thanks for flying by.